Hello, my name is David, and this is my presentation around the design ethics of AI. Um, yeah, let's get into it. So, with learning and education, I kind of formatted everything kind of in pros and cons. Some things are low key just cons, but I thought learning and education was interesting because, I'm a student, a lot of other students use AI. Um, Sometimes I use AI. I use it for busy work and clarity. I don't really use it as inspiration, but I do think those can benefit. Those are benefits of using AI in design work. Is it can make those mind maps a lot easier. And if I need to think of 100 other synonyms for difficult, I could just ask the AI. But honestly, like I can also go onto dictionary.com and figure that out too. Um, Clarity, sometimes I type crazy. Um, Sometimes other people type crazy. And so, you know, it allows me to communicate my rationale a lot easier. But that kind of goes into cons. Critically thinking, that's huge. It's an education where we're, uh, we're paying a tuition so we can learn how to critically think better. Um, and so I believe that that's just huge. And AI kind of does hinder that. I also believe that there can become a reliance for final results. Um, yeah, and less interaction with peers. Peer critiques are huge. Um, Having feedback, especially when it comes to something like user experience, like you want like a human's insight on what you created. So, especially in an educational setting. When it comes to work, I haven't really like been in the design field, so I can't necessarily say a lot. Like I've done freelance. I don't think I've used AI for freelance, but I'd assume that it's kind of the same. It worked, if I were to use it, it would help with that busy work. It would help with that clarity. It would help with being punctual, like getting that busy work out of the way, and so you can get straight into the designing. Um, but yeah, those can all be things that can help with that. With the cons, though, again, when we're thinking about human-centered design, you want it to be designed by a human. That goes into reliance for final results. Same thing I mentioned earlier. You don't want the AI to design the stuff for you. You'd probably want it to brainstorm for you, and that could be beneficial because it can think of a million things at once because it's reading from a million things at once. But it's not necessarily something you want to rely on. And you wouldn't necessarily know if you know using this AI would align with the company values. Let's say you're doing design work for a company that's focused around the environment. It would be ironic with what we know about what AI does to the environment for you to use that in your process work. With society, um, the main thing I did put down efficiency. That's pretty self-explanatory, but accessibility and uh, benefiting people who might be blind, hard of hearing, deaf. Really like edge case users can really help out with that. Like just being able to implement it into your design, like just being able to have something that everyone is able to use, and maybe application or website can really benefit off of that, of using AI so you can communicate to users who are or just so happen to be edge case users. Um, the downside of it, misinformation, um, and reliance again. Um, it pulls data from all over everything, and AI is kind of, at least from the AI that I've used, it feels like it's built around validation and engagement, keeping you validated, keeping you engaged. Um, so that can happen with users too. It can be used for bad. It can also fall into your own values as a designer or artist. Personally, like, I like to paint and draw on the side. Um, I do not touch AI in that aspect because I like to pull things from what I see in my life, what I see on the internet, things that are built off of my own taste. I think that's huge. Just considering the values, your own values whenever you're making something for someone else or their values. For the environment, it's bad. It's bad for the environment. Those data centers are not good. Lots of heat. That's a like huge concern. Global warming is very real. It's been humid, or that like climate change and all that. It's being humid in Colorado. We're an elevated desert. That's crazy. Shouldn't really be humid here. I love humidity. Doesn't make sense here. And the water that it's using can't be reused. So it's just a lot of dirty water that we can't use. And that sucks because a lot of people don't have access to those resources. And those data centers are built in places where they probably shouldn't be built because that's also terrible for the environment around it. Um, with governance and regulation, I think regulation is huge. Um, we had I don't know the specific bill, but they sneaked in a little bit of information that they're like, AI won't be regulated as much for like 10 years, which is crazy work because it needs to be regulated. We need to know what data that it's using. We need to restrict it because it's very powerful and we don't want it to be abused. And in the cons I put down, wrong people can regulate it. And that's true if the wrong people get their hands, and I think low-key they have. If the wrong people get their hands on this type of stuff, it doesn't necessarily do any good for anyone. Um, it'll also cause like so maybe like a spread of just too many things at once. Um, too many inflated designs, artworks everywhere that it kind of devalues the things that are made by people. Childhood development was something that I actually found interesting, and I guess it kind of links with design. I just thought it was an interesting bullet point that was brought up, but it could be a really good resource for educators and parents and guardians or anyone, you know, that needs to use this technology to help them in their daily life because it definitely does have its benefits. But I also think it's important to realize that critical thinking and creative problem solving are built off of not knowing and trying to figure something out. And with this new generation, at least the generation after me, I mean, even my generation, all of our answers are being brought to us. And it's important that like we take the time to know why something is like something, or how to solve creatively or how to make decisions. And that's huge. That's huge. We want to encourage creativity in kids. We want to make sure that this is something that they're able to do, and we want to develop skills that could help literally everybody. Like, this is huge. This is a really big deal to make sure, you know, every generation can critically think. With media, put down efficiency as the pros. I feel like with anything in AI, it's going to be efficient. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Generate stuff super fast. But misinformation and misinterpreted data, like how we experimented with AI hallucinating, I think it's important to consider how you can feed it things and it's going to spit it back at you because, again, most of these AI's goals are to keep you engaged because at the end of the day, if it's free, you're the product. You're creating that. The engagement, that's how they profit off of that somehow. I don't know the logistics, but it's just important to consider that the media that you're consuming, that it could be wrong, and AI definitely does feed into it, and especially when it comes to design work. You don't want to overinflate it with things that are wrong. Consent. I can only think of cons. I'm not even gonna lie. Deep fakes, fake voices, fake faces, using people's, you know, likeliness without their consent. This can come from Gen AI, using, people's faces to create and generate some sort of something. I think that's gross. I think that's weird, especially in design. I think it's a lot more powerful, even though, again, efficiency is the goal. I think a design is a lot more powerful when you consider other things in it. Um, the human touch in the process. As I think that's the best way I could word that. I mentioned that it could lean into media as well. Um, and the uncredited work AI uses and looks at so many things, so many images. I don't think AI has ever like messaged the artist and been like, hey, can I use your work, or hey, I'm inspired by this. I don't think it does that. um, so I think AI it doesn't really consent to the things that it takes from. And yeah, I think that's important to consider, especially when you're doing design work, is where are you getting your ideas from? And data sharing. Um, I kind of took this on like what data the AI is being fed. When I put down corporate greed and lack of transparency, because we don't know what data is being fed to the AI, and I don't think the AI necessarily knows what data it's being fed. Because if it did, it would make the AI seem a lot less confident. Um, and I don't think a lot of companies really want to, show off the fact that their AI that just came out doesn't know something when they're advertising it as knowing everything. Um, I just think that's huge, and especially when it comes to design work, like it's important to credit your inspirations, like even in the mood boards or in a rationale. You should be able to be like, hey, I am inspired by this designer or this work ethic or this result, and this is why I'm inspired by it. I think that's huge. I think that's huge in creative work too. Um, I realized that I forgot to add a thank you slide, but thank you for listening. Again, my name is David. But yeah, those are my thoughts around AI and design work.